Violence in Malaysia as religious and ethnic tensions deepen. Are there hidden reasons for Muslims' fury over the use of the word Allah? And what implications for the peaceful coexistence of religions in Malaysia? This is Inside Story. Hello there, I'm Nick Clark. Welcome to the programme. Attacks on churches in Malaysia follow anger at a court decision allowing a Roman Catholic newspaper to use the word Allah to describe God. Some Muslims in Malaysia argue that Allah is exclusive to Islam and its use by Christians is wrong. But church officials say Arabic-speaking Christians have always used the term Allah to refer to God, and they say it's unreasonable and unconstitutional to proclaim the word Allah should not be used by Christians in Malaysia. The debate has been ongoing for months, but it got violent on Friday when 4 churches in separate incidents were attacked. The violence has since escalated. While the government condemned the attacks, it will still attempt to have the decision to allow the newspaper to use the word Allah overturned. Well, on the streets of Kuala Lumpur, not surprisingly, Muslim and Christian voices are divided by the attacks.
Allah is meant for only Muslim, not for other races. We live in this multiracial country with all harmonies. Everybody has been so good to each other. Why there are some people trying to break all this?
All my life, none of my friends, Catholics, never use the word Allah regarding to the same with God. Never. It must be Tuhan or God, not Allah is God. No, never.
Whoever did this thing, if they identify the person, I would want to go and hug the person and tell him, brother, I love you. That's what I'll do. That's what I'll do. There will be no hard feelings.
I would like to urge the religious leaders, the Muslim religious leaders should come out to strongly to urge the followers not to carry out this kind of terrorist attacks against the churches anymore.
Well, joining us now are our guests in Kuala Lumpur, Harold Faiz Morat. He's Vice President of International Affairs of the Malaysian Islamic Youth Movement. Also in Kuala Lumpur, Reverend Herman Shastri. He's the General Secretary of the Council of Churches of Malaysia. And in Boston, in the United States, we have Zachary Abuza. He's a Professor of Political Science at Simmons College, and he specialises in the politics of Southeast Asia. Welcome, gentlemen, all. I'd like to start with Harold Faiz, if I may. Why is it a problem for the Malaysian Islamic Youth Movement that Malay Christians use the word Allah when referring to God?
Thank you. I would like to start by quoting the Senior Federal Counsel, Datuk Kamaluddin Mat Said, in his submission to the High Court on the Catholic Church application for judicial review over the prohibited use of the word Allah in Catholic Weekly Herald. Kamaluddin reportedly submitted that Allah was exclusive to Islam as it was a special name of the Muslim God. He also mentioned that in our country, if one refers to Allah or mentions kalimah Allah, it will bring to one's mind that it refers to the God for Muslims. Kalimah Allah is sacred to the Muslims and put at the highest position, and its sanctity must be protected.
Okay. Now, listen, let me just jump in there because it's fine reading that material, but it is a word, nevertheless. It has been used by both Islam and Christianity since the very beginning of those religions, and indeed before those religions actually started. So what do you say to that?
I would like to stress that Malaysia is a unique country compared to the other countries where Islam has been mentioned in the federal constitution and recognized as the official religion of the country. And we have preserved our harmonious relationship among the different faiths in the country for so many years until now by respecting each other, by not raising sensitive issues.
But so in your view,
then,
Allah can only mean, in
yeah.
your view, Allah can only mean Islam's one supreme God. Is that your
Yes.
position?
Yes.
Okay, well, let me
we
at
maintain
this
the
point-
position of Allah. Yeah.
Okay, let me at this point bring in
Yeah.
Reverend Herman Shastri, General Secretary of the Council of Churches of Malaysia. From your Christian perspective, what's your response to that?
Yeah. Firstly, it should be noted that Christians in this country have used the word since the dawn of Christian missions in the Peninsular Malaysia and in the states of Sabah and Sarawak since the 19th century. Furthermore, the word has not been a point of contention all this while, as it is widely used not only in many parts of the Middle East, but also in Indonesia, where the majority population are Muslims. Only of late, there have been some strong voices from some quarters stating that this word is exclusive only to Islam. And to be honest, there are many different views out there on that matter.
Okay,
In the past few weeks.
just let me just interrupt you, because given the sensitivities that Mr. Fez was just referring to there, that he was alluding to, is it really necessary to use the word Allah? There are other words that can be used, and given the sensitivities, it's a dangerous thing to do, to try and push for it to be used.
Yeah, except that we're not pushing it right now. It has been used for over centuries, and it has not been a point of contention. So if you want to take up this issue, we have to ask, what is that point of contention that people are raising?
Okay, well,
And they
let's
are
put that
raising
to Mr. Fez. They've been using it for centuries, so what's the problem?
We believe that for the last few years, I mean, so many years we have been living in harmony among the different faiths, that the word of Allah has always been referring to the God of the Muslims. So
But that's not the case. As we've just been exploring, it's actually it's been referred to by people who adhere to religions before Islam and before Christianity.
If you were to the Christians want to prolong this issue by using the court of law, it is not the best option, because it will it will provoke the Muslims. We believe that this issue should be settled out of court through continuous closed-door interface dialogues among the religious leaders and stakeholders to preserve the harmonious relationship among the different faiths.
It's certainly a very sensitive issue. Let me bring in Zachary Abuza. You specialise in Southeast Asia. It's a bit of a minefield, isn't it, to say the least?
It is. I certainly was troubled by the comment that for the Muslim God or Islamic God, because these are all, of course, from the Abrahamic traditions, and it should be the same God. Yes, it is a sensitive issue, but I agree with the Reverend when he said before that this is a word that has been used throughout the centuries. It's used by Christians in Indonesia, a much larger, indeed the largest Muslim country in the world. I think that the Muslims in Malaysia right now are really overreacting to something, and it's been quite politicized.
Okay, Kahol Fez, Muslims are overreacting in Malaysia.
We believe that we are not overreacting, because the word Allah has always been is very close to our heart, and it's always close to our heart. And can I stop from there?
No, please carry on.
Excuse me. Yeah. The word of Allah is, we equate that to only Muslims, and
okay, we understand that, but let me put this to
for
you.
instance,
Do you support? Yeah, that is your position, and we understand and appreciate that. But do you support the firebombing of churches in protest? Would you support those actions?
Yeah, we condemn those acts. Those acts are not Islamic. It's against the religion. But we always maintain that due to our tolerance, our mutual respect of one another all this while, we managed to avoid such occurrences. But until recently, such incidents occurs. So we would like to urge everybody to think about it, and probably the best solution is to keep it a closed door discussion among the stakeholders instead of bringing this matter to the court of law to question on whether the freedom should be given to the Catholics to use the word of Allah.
Reverend Shastri, what about that? It should be a discussion behind closed doors and not in a court of law.
Oh, the church is of course open to all avenues, because the use of the word Allah is done in daily worship, in the devotional life of Christians. It is not meant to confuse anybody, not to hurt anybody. And so the church is open to any avenue in order to explain its position clearly and to gain mutual respect from all other religious communities in the country.
Zachary Abuza, as a kind of middleman in all of this out in Boston in the United States, in researching for this program, I've read of certain fears amongst the Muslim community that the use of this word is all part of a Christian effort to convert Muslims to Christianity. Do you think there's any credence in that, or is that nonsense?
I think it's a lot of fear on the part of Muslims in Indonesia, and it's not well founded. The Constitution equates the Malay identity with Muslims, and they've been very concerned about apostasy, people leaving the Muslim faith. And in fact, in the past 3-4 years, there have been a number of very high-profile cases in the country in which people have tried to leave Islam or have been forced back into it in some cases, that have been just very divisive politically and have really torn this multi-ethnic country apart and caused terrible race relations, some of the worst since the early 1970s.
Okay, I'll tell you what, let's just have a look at the makeup of Malaysia, its demographics, if you like. Malaysia's population of over 28 million people is very much a mixed bag of various ethnic and religious groups. Malays and other indigenous groups make up 65% of the population. Chinese are 26%, that's about 1/4 of the total population, and Indians and other ethnic groups account for around 9% of the population, while 60% of the people are Muslims. It is a multi-religious society, and religious freedom is guaranteed by the Malaysian constitution. And emphasising on unity and diversity, the Prime Minister Najib Razak has been pushing a programme he calls One Malaysia, and he says he wants the government to work towards ethnic harmony and national unity. But of course, since the recent events, his commitment to the task has come under severe scrutiny, with possibly far-reaching political implications. Khail Faiz, if I could put this to you, of course there are Muslims, Christians, Hindus and Buddhists in Malaysia, and it has been suggested that this row has been deliberately fuelled by a government struggling to maintain its dominance amongst its Muslim Malay base. What do you think about that suggestion?
I believe our position is not too distant from what the government is doing, because the government is also appealing the decision of the court at the moment, and we are hoping for the reverse of the decision recently made. Of course, if we want to preserve the harmonious relationship, we have to be sensitive to one another. And this is one of the things that is sensitive to the Muslims. So we believe it should be discussed within the closed door discussion among the stakeholders only.
Reverend Shastri,
to avoid unnecessary interpretation.
Okay, Reverend Shastri, it is incumbent upon the Catholic Church to acknowledge those sensitivities and act by them, and therefore perhaps one may suggest that the demand to use the word Allah is a little insensitive.
Yeah, we would think so because we have been using it all along and with no intention to hurt any community. And you must understand that the faith community in this country, all of the minority faith communities are guaranteed under the Constitution to practice their faith freely.
So in your view,
and to
is
translate their
in your view, is this
scriptures
indicative
freely.
of a broader growing animosity then?
Yeah, then we have to understand what is driving that animosity. And it is communal sentiments that are being played up, and they are, many of the issues are politicized. So ordinary religious issues become highly politicized and polarize the various communities. And so it's very difficult to engage in a dialogue when there are political considerations. You have political leaders making statement on religious issues. They make a statement and think that's the only valid statement. In the past few weeks, we have seen that there are many statements made by Muslim leaders, political leaders, civil groups, interfaith groups, and they have all taken positions that we have always lived in peace. And just the use of the word Allah should not be the one that should be driving the communities and religious communities apart.
But the thing is, this court ruling has actually gone in favour of Christianity, hasn't it? Which would suggest that the animosity is perhaps not as bad as you are suggesting.
Yeah, sure. So we are willing to abide by that court decision because we feel that in a country such as ours, which is democratic, then this is a democratic means. It takes away all the political angles to an issue, and just based on law, one can objectively look at the Constitution and provide parameters for all the various communities to live together and claim the provision of freedom of religion.
Okay, Harold Fez, your country's constitution seems to back up what Reverend Shastri is saying, doesn't it?
Not really, because under the federal constitution, it's provided that the religion of Islam is the religion of the country, while maintaining that the other faiths can practice their religion peacefully, provided that they do not propagate their religions to the Muslims. The reason the Muslims at the moment are not at ease is because the likelihood of misuse of the word of Allah to confuse the Muslims will be there by certain irresponsible people.
In what sense do you mean it could confuse Muslims? What do you mean by that?
It can start from the word of Allah, then it will follow with other words that's normally used by Muslims, then it may confuse some of the Muslims about their own religion. For instance, the ruling of the court at the moment is for the word of Allah to be used in the publication in Malay language. However, if we were to use the Malay language, the word should not be Allah. Allah is not a Malay word. As a Muslim, when we say La ilaha illallah,
okay,
we don't say La ilaha illallah means there is no God but God. But as a Muslim, we say there is no God but Allah. Allah is higher than the word God. You see?
Okay, let me bring in Zakaria Boozer again. This decision, of course, is going to be appealed by the government. It's going to appeal. What do you think about that? Do you think it's going to lead to more trouble?
I do. I don't see how this is going to benefit the government at all, or the country at all. I see this playing very much into the next wave of elections. In March 2008, the ruling coalition took a real drubbing. They lost their 2/3 majority for the first time in decades. They lost 5 of 13 seats in the country. And I think that the major member of this coalition, UMNO, is going to work very hard to try to show its Muslim bona fides so that they can win back some of the Muslim electorate that they've been losing to the political opposition. And I think it's very unfortunate. As I said, this has come after several years of heightened tensions between the different communities in the country. In November 2007, you had more than 10,000 Indians and Hindus rioting in the streets.
But come on, it seems
really
a little unlikely, doesn't it? This idea
country.
that the government would incite violence simply to bolster their support.
Oh, I'm not saying they're going to incite violence, but whether they're going to crack down on this is, you know, these things have a way of taking on a life of their own.
Okay, Reverend Shastri, do you think we're at the tipping point now, or have we crossed it already, in fact? Will it be hard to retrieve an acceptable, peaceful status quo from here, or what's in your heart about this?
Oh, naturally, it's the wish of all the church leaders in this country to find a peaceful resolution. It is not the intent of the church to be a troublemaker in the society. But I want to come back to this point about confusing the Muslims. I mean, we take the position that the practice of faith is an internal matter of each religious community. So Muslims receive their religious teaching in the mosque, Christians receive their teachings in the church. So how can there be confusion? I mean, there's space for each religious community to teach their own adherents about the faith. So there can be, there's no confusion. And you're talking about a percentage of 9% Christians. You mean 9% Christians can confuse 60% of Muslims?
Well, okay, let's put that to Harold Fez. It's an internal matter for each religion. How can there be confusion? How can 9% confuse 60% of the population?
We are not saying that the 9% will confuse the majority of 60%, but we are talking about some percentage that will be confused by the prevailing usage of the word of Allah by other religions.
Okay, Zachary, let me just give you the last word, if I may. What do you think, which direction do you think this is going? Do you think it's going to resolve itself, or is this going to be an ongoing problem?
I unfortunately think that it's going to be an ongoing problem simply because the nature of Malaysian politics. Most political parties, and certainly the largest political parties, are all race-based and to a degree religiously based political parties. And I just see that this is going to play itself out until the next general election.
Okay, Zachary Abuz, Harold Fez. Reverend Shastri, thanks for your contributions. You've all thrown a light on a difficult subject, and thanks for watching.
Thank you for having me.
This edition of Inside Story. We'd like to hear from you, of course. Email us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. From me, Nick Clark, it's goodbye.